All right, let's dive deep today. We're going to help get you prepped for a procurement support officer interview. These are the folks, that really keep those procurement engines running smoothly. They handle those meetings, become that go-to person for all things procedural. I mean, talk about a vital role. And you've brought some excellent resources for us to kind of dig into.
Absolutely. I think these guides and these resources are going to be so invaluable for helping candidates stand out as a top candidate in those interviews.
Okay, so let's jump right into these interview questions. We're going to be talking about the interview guide, Procurement Support Officer. And one that really jumped out at me was, can you tell us about a time when you had to resolve a procurement-related dispute? I mean, this kind of feels like they're trying to see if you can problem solve, right?
Definitely. Interviewers really want to see how you handle conflict, especially in procurement, where you're dealing with vendors, you're dealing with budgets, and you're dealing with tight deadlines. And they really want to make sure that you are able to navigate those situations effectively.
So it's not enough to just say, I'm a good problem solver. How do you actually demonstrate that skill?
Well, I think that the STAR method is always a great way to go. You want to briefly describe the situation, outline the task at hand, and explain the actions that you took, and then highlight the results that you achieved. But I think what's really important here, and especially when we're talking about a procurement support officer, is that you really want to focus on the actions that you take. You want to show that you have those traits that are so crucial for this job. So think about things like negotiation, diplomacy, meticulous record keeping. Those are all things that are really going to show an interviewer that you have what it takes to be successful in this role.
Ah, so it's about tailoring that STAR method to this specific job, right? Can you give us a concrete example? Like, how would that sound?
Yeah, so let's say, for example, you have a vendor who's consistently delivering materials late,
Yeah.
and that's impacting your company's production schedule. So that's the situation. The task is obvious, right? You have to fix that problem. So what action did you take? Well, you could say something like, I first reviewed the contract terms, and then I documented every single instance of late delivery. And that gave me a really solid ground to stand on when I contacted the vendor. But instead of going in there, guns blazing, you want to I really focused on understanding their challenges while emphasizing the contractual obligations.
I see, I see. So you're showing that attention to detail, right? And you're showing that you can be diplomatic
Mm.
and that you can be firm but fair. What about the result? Like, how do you end that?
Yeah, so you could wrap it up by saying something like, by combining a firm grasp of the contract with that open communication, we negotiated a revised delivery schedule. And that really met both of our needs. And that not only minimized further production delays, but it also helped to strengthen our relationship with that vendor.
That's a fantastic example because it shows you're a problem solver, but you're also showing them that you can maintain those really crucial vendor relationships. Now, I know that RoleCatcher can actually analyze answers and provide feedback. Could using that tool help you kind of fine-tune your answers for these types of questions?
Absolutely. RoleCatcher can really analyze those answers, identify areas for improvement, and even suggest ways to make those answers more impactful for these roles. So it's almost like having a personalized coach in your pocket.
That's really incredible. Okay, moving on to another question that really piqued my interest. This one's, how do you prioritize procurement requests? It sounds pretty straightforward, but I bet there's a lot to think about here.
Yeah, there's a lot more to this question than meets the eye. Interviewers are really trying to gauge your organizational skills and your judgment. They want to see if you can handle a lot of requests that are coming at you and make the right decisions under pressure, and then allocate your resources effectively. And those are all things that are really crucial for a procurement support officer.
Yeah, so how do you approach this question? I mean, how do you not just say, I'm great at prioritizing? What do you actually tell them?
I think you want to demonstrate that you have a process, that you're not just randomly picking things to work on. So you could say something like, I evaluate all of the incoming requests based on urgency, impact on operations, budget constraints, and alignment with strategic goals. And then you could give a real or hypothetical example. So let's say, for example, you have a rush order for some critical components, and then you have a request for some new office furniture, and then you also have a supplier contract that needs to be renewed.
Oh, okay. So you've got like a lot of classic procurement juggling act there. How do you pick which one comes first?
Well, this is where you can showcase those analytical skills that we talked about. So you would explain how you weigh the impact of each one of those requests. So, okay, well, if we delay those critical components, that could actually halt production, and that's going to cost the company a lot of money. The office furniture, while important, is not as urgent, and that contract renewal needs attention, but we might be able to negotiate a little bit on the time frame.
So it's about showing you can think strategically and you can balance all those things. And that's, like you said, that's vital for a procurement support officer.
Exactly. And by using those concrete examples, you're not just telling them that you can prioritize, you're showing them how you do it.
Right. Okay. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It's all about showing them those core procurement skills that you have. Let's go on to another question that I think is very relevant to this role. How do you ensure that vendor relationships are managed effectively? This feels like a real balancing act. You're trying to get the best deals, but you also have to maintain those strong partnerships.
It is. And I think that a good answer here demonstrates that you understand that balance. And so you want to start by showcasing your process for actually identifying and selecting those vendors. So you might say something like, I conduct thorough due diligence, I check references, and then I compare proposals to find the best fit for our organization's needs.
That's important, right? It shows you're not just going out there and picking randomly. You're really assessing them, their suitability.
Yeah.
What else? What else can you highlight?
You want to also talk about your approach to monitoring vendor performance. So you could say, I track key performance indicators, I conduct regular performance reviews, and I maintain that open communication so I can address any issues proactively. And that really shows you're not just securing the deal and walking away, you're really in it for the long haul, and you're going to manage that relationship for the long term.
I like it. It shows you're being proactive about it, which is, again, key for this job, a procurement support officer. But what happens when things go wrong? I mean, things happen, right? Disputes are bound to happen.
Yeah, of course. And this is where you can circle back to that STAR method and highlight your conflict resolution skills. And so this would be a great place to share an example where you maybe had a dispute with a vendor and you successfully navigated that. And you want to really focus on how did you understand their perspective? How did you find common ground? And how did you negotiate a win-win solution?
Right. That'd be great to hear if you're the interviewer. Now, before we go to the next question, I'm kind of curious about something. We've talked about how RoleCatcher can analyze your answers and provide you feedback. Does it also offer resources for kind of understanding the broader career path for procurement support officers?
Yeah, you're in luck. RoleCatcher has a feature called Career Compass, and that can help you explore different specializations that are within procurement. You can understand the skills that you need to advance. You can even discover related fields that you might want to transition into later on.
That's a great resource, especially for someone who's starting out, or maybe they want to take their career to that next level. Okay, let's go to another question that I saw here. How do you ensure that procurement activities are aligned with organizational goals? So they really want to see if you understand, the big picture of the company's mission.
Yeah, this is really a test of your strategic thinking skills. They want to see if you're not just focused on checking off those boxes, but you're really thinking about how your work is contributing to the overall success of the organization.
Okay, so how do you approach that? I mean, how do you not just sound like you're repeating the company's mission statement? How do you make it real?
I think you want to highlight the process that you use for staying informed about those goals. So you could say, I attend relevant meetings, I make sure I review the strategic plans, and I'm actively communicating with stakeholders so I really understand the big picture. And that's really demonstrating that you're proactive in aligning those procurement activities with the company's overall direction.
Makes sense. Makes sense. You're not working in a silo, right?
Yeah.
You're actively trying to figure out what's going on. But then how do you translate that into actual actions?
Yeah.
How do those goals become procurement actions?
That's where you give those concrete examples. So maybe you identified some cost-saving opportunities that freed up budget for strategic initiatives, or maybe you sourced some sustainable materials that aligned with the company's environmental commitments.
That's great. Great. So it's about showcasing how those skills that you have in procurement directly contributed to their bottom line, or their overall mission. Seems like that's the theme here, connecting those answers back to the value that you bring to the company.
Precisely. Every single answer is an opportunity to demonstrate your understanding of the role and its impact on the organization.
This has been so insightful. Let's take a quick break and come back and tackle more of these interview questions and really delve deeper into the world of procurement.
All right, well, let's jump back into these interview questions. One that often comes up, and it might throw you off a little, is how do you ensure that procurement activities comply with all the relevant laws and regulations? It's not just about finding the best deal. It's also got to be ethical and legal.
Right. No company wants to get into trouble because something went wrong in procurement. What's the best way for someone to kind of reassure the interviewer that they're taking compliance really seriously?
Yeah, I think you really want to demonstrate a proactive approach to staying informed. So mention any industry publications that you follow or professional development courses you've taken. Or maybe even if you're a member of organizations like ISM or CIPS, that shows that you're not just passively following rules, you're actively seeking out knowledge.
So it's about that commitment to continuous learning,
Mhm.
right? Making sure that you're up to date on all the legal and ethical stuff. But then what about the practical steps? How do you actually incorporate that into your daily work?
You want to talk about your systems. Do you have checklists you use for reviewing contracts? Do you consult with the legal department if necessary? Do you have documented compliance procedures? All of those things are going to show the interviewer that you have a system in place to ensure that those rules are applied consistently.
Right. So it's about having a system. Okay,
Yeah.
this next one, I feel like this one has tricky written all over it. Can you tell us about a time when you had to resolve a procurement-related dispute? It seems like even if you have all the best systems in place, disagreements are going to happen.
Oh, absolutely they do. And this is where you can really shine. You can showcase those problem-solving and conflict resolution skills that we've been talking about. So again, that STAR method is your friend here.
Yeah.
You want to choose an example where you faced a challenging dispute. Maybe it was a disagreement with a vendor or an internal conflict over a purchasing decision, something like that.
Okay, let's say it was a vendor who was consistently delivering like subpar materials.
Yeah.
How would you walk the interviewer through that whole resolution process?
All right, so you'd start with that situation. You could say, we were working with a vendor who had been providing materials for a major project, but we started to notice that the quality was consistently below the standards that we had agreed on.
Right.
And then you'd outline your task. So my responsibility was to address this with the vendor and make sure that we received the quality materials that we needed without jeopardizing the project timeline.
Okay, so that sets the stage. It shows the challenge. And then what actions did you take?
Right, so you'd explain your process. You'd say, I gathered all the documentation, the contract specifications, the evidence of those subpar materials, and then I contacted the vendor to schedule a meeting to discuss the issue. And that shows that you're organized and that you have a very professional approach.
Great. So you're not just jumping in and accusing them. You're coming prepared. What happened at the meeting?
So this is where you demonstrate those communication and negotiation skills that are so important for a procurement support officer. You could say something like, at the meeting, I calmly presented the evidence and I explained our concerns, but I also listened to their perspective to understand what challenges they were facing.
So you're being firm on the issue, but you're also open to hearing what they have to say, right? What was the outcome? Like, how did it end?
You want to end on a positive note. So you could say something like, we worked together and we developed a plan that included stricter quality control measures on their end, and we revised the delivery schedule to accommodate those improvements. And ultimately, the vendor delivered to our satisfaction and the project was completed successfully. That shows you were able to find that win-win solution.
It's a great example of turning a negative situation into a positive, right?
Right.
And it shows that you can solve problems, that you're a good communicator, and you can build those bridges. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier, which is that career progression for procurement support officers.
Yeah.
I know RoleCatcher has that career compass, but can you give us a quick overview of the different stages? What does each one entail?
Sure. So typically you start off as a procurement assistant and they provide that administrative support. Then you might move up to procurement coordinator. And at that point, you're taking on more responsibility for coordinating activities and managing relationships.
So you're getting more responsibility. What comes after that?
The next step could be a procurement specialist, and they really focus on a specific category of goods or services. They develop that deep expertise in one area. And then finally, you could reach the procurement manager, and at that point, you're leading the entire team and shaping overall strategies.
That's really helpful to kind of see like the trajectory, right? And it's exciting because it shows there are many directions you can take your procurement skills. I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up this section. This one seems to get to the heart of like your decision making. Can you tell us about a time when you had to make a really difficult decision related to procurement?
Okay, so this is another great opportunity to use that STAR method and highlight your judgment and problem-solving skills and your ability to balance competing priorities. Think of a time when you had to make a tough call. Maybe you had to choose between vendors that had different strengths and weaknesses, or maybe you had to make a decision that had some ethical implications.
Okay, let's say you had two vendors. One offered the lowest price, but they had kind of a questionable track record on quality. The other one was more expensive, but they're known for delivering high-quality products. Like, how would you approach that?
Well, you could start by describing that situation, right? We needed to source a critical component for a new product launch. We had two vendors, and one was offering a lower price, but they had some quality issues in the past. The other one was more expensive, but they were known for being very consistent with their quality.
So you've got the classic dilemma. You want to save money, but you also need quality and reliability.
Yeah.
So what was your task in this? What did you have to do?
Yeah, so you would clearly define your role. You could say, my task was to evaluate both of these vendors and then make a recommendation considering the price, the quality, the reliability, and any potential risks. And that shows you understand that there are multiple facets to a procurement decision.
Right, right. You're not just looking at one thing. Okay, so you had to weigh all those things. How did you make the decision? How did you decide?
Well, this is where you showcase those analytical skills. You could say, I conducted a thorough analysis, reviewed their past performance data, conducted reference checks, and carefully evaluated their proposals. So that shows you're not just taking their word for it, you're doing your due diligence.
So you're digging a little deeper.
Right.
You're going beyond the initial quotes. What did your analysis show you? What did you find?
Right, so you'd share those insights. You might say, my analysis revealed that the lower-priced vendor had a history of delivery delays and quality inconsistencies, and that could really jeopardize our product launch. But the higher-priced vendor, they had a proven track record of on-time delivery and those high-quality products.
So it sounds like the cheaper option had some risks. So what was your decision?
Yeah, this is where you highlight your judgment. Based on my analysis, I recommended the higher-priced vendor, and that's because I believed that ensuring the quality and the reliability outweighed those short-term cost savings.
And then what happened? What was the result of going that way?
And then you end on a positive note. You showcase the impact of that decision. My recommendation was accepted, the higher-priced vendor delivered as promised, and our product launch was a success, and we avoided those potential risks that were associated with that lower-priced vendor.
That's a great example.
Right.
You made a tough decision, you explained it, you were thorough, and you looked at the long term. I know we've talked about it a lot, but I really want to emphasize how valuable RoleCatcher can be. It can help you fine-tune your answers. It can help you explore all those career options.
Absolutely. Whether it's analyzing your answers or providing insights into career paths, RoleCatcher can be an incredible asset, both for preparing for the interview and for your overall career journey.
This has been so insightful. We've covered so much, from those tricky interview questions to figuring out what your career path might look like.
Remember, preparation is key. We've given you a lot to think about today, and we've given you lots of tools and strategies to help you succeed.
And don't forget about mindset.
Yeah.
Go in there feeling confident, be enthusiastic, and show them that you're genuinely interested in the job and the company.
You got this. Let those skills, that experience, and that passion for procurement shine through.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like we've covered everything, A to Z of Procurement Support Officer interview prep. Our listener has got to be feeling pretty well equipped to ace that interview.
Who knows, maybe one day they'll be sitting here sharing their procurement wisdom with the world.
That's a great thought. To all our listeners, go out there and make those procurement dreams come true. Welcome back. We've talked a lot about those Procurement Support Officer interview questions and how to answer them. But now, how about we talk about mindset? That's just as important as knowing the right answer.
Absolutely. You could have all the right answers memorized, but if you don't project confidence, a positive attitude, it really doesn't matter. You have to walk into that interview, feeling like you're ready to showcase your skills and who you are.
So how do you get that confidence? I know I get pre-interview jitters all the time.
It's completely normal to feel nervous. Everyone does. It's all about managing those nerves, not letting those nerves manage you. And my top tip, deep breathing. Super simple, but it's a really powerful technique to calm your nervous system down. Just take those slow, deep breaths in and out. It can really kind of hit that reset button on your anxiety.
I can see how that would help center you before you walk in the room.
Yeah.
Any other tips for calming those nerves?
One thing that helps me is thinking of the interview more as a conversation than like an interrogation. It's a chance to share your expertise with someone who might be a future colleague, right? And remember, the interviewer's human too. They know what it's like.
That's a great point. Yeah, shifting that perspective from, it's not a test, it's a conversation. I like that. It takes some of that pressure off. So beyond just, feeling confident on the inside, how do you actually project that? How do you make that strong first impression?
I would say a genuine smile goes a long way. It makes you instantly more approachable, more memorable, and then good eye contact. Making eye contact shows that you're engaged, that you're confident in what you're saying.
So you're making that connection, right?
hmm
Showing them that you're present. What about body language? I know that can say a lot, sometimes things we don't intend.
Oh, yeah. Sit up straight. Lean in a little bit, to show that you're engaged. Use your hands. Gesture naturally to emphasize points. These are all cues that can really make a difference in how you come across.
Yeah, it's interesting how those small little nonverbal things can make a big difference. We've talked a lot about answering their questions, but what about asking your own questions? I bet that can make an impression too.
Absolutely. Asking thoughtful questions really shows that you've done your research,
Yeah.
that you're curious about the role, about the company, and that you're thinking beyond just getting the job right.
It shows you're taking initiative, and it shows you're a proactive person. Great qualities for any procurement support officer. Do you have any advice on, like, what types of questions to ask?
I would focus on questions that show that you're interested in the company's goals or the team's culture, or maybe the specific challenges and opportunities of the role. And I always think it's a good idea to ask about professional development opportunities. It shows that you're thinking long term.
Those are great, great suggestions. As we wrap up this deep dive, is there any final thought you want to leave our listener with as they go into their interview?
Just remember that preparation is key. We've talked about so much today, from tackling those tough questions to understanding the career landscape. We've given you the tools and strategies.
And don't forget about that mindset. Walk into that interview feeling confident, with enthusiasm, and show them that you really want to connect with them.
And you got this.
Yeah.
Let your skills, your experience, and that passion for procurement really shine through.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered everything, I think, A to Z of Procurement Support Officer interview prep. Our listeners should be feeling well-equipped and ready to ace that interview.
And who knows, maybe one day they'll be the ones sitting here, sharing their procurement wisdom with the world.
What a great thought. To all our listeners out there, go out there and make those procurement dreams a reality.